You'll remember a year ago, he was profiled, he was shot, and he was killed. And it influenced millions of you parents out there to talk to your kids about racism. It was a year ago today that 17-year-old Trayvon Martin walked to the store for a bag of Skittles and iced tea, and he never made it home. He was murdered by the neighborhood watchman you're seeing there on the other side of the screen, George Zimmerman. It was Trayvon's look, too, that Zimmerman says made him suspicious. And a hoodie became a symbol of racism.
This case has polarized the nation along racial and political lines.
Just because someone wears a hoodie does not make them a hooligan.
I am urging the parents of Black and Latino youngsters particularly to not let their children go out wearing hoodies.
Our son was not committing any crime.
We need to work very hard to make him much more than a symbol.
Our son is your son. Yes!
Also joining us for this discussion, Deneen Milner from MyBrownBaby.com joining in. You know, Deneen, you owned this conversation a year ago, and you have not let it go. The fact that if you see a black kid in a hoodie, he's a thug. Has the conversation changed over the last year at all?
I think the conversation has changed in terms of understanding how difficult it is to be a black parent in America and really sort of let your child out into the world with that fear that something is going to go wrong, that constant, consistent fear that we have. And this has been a conversation that's been going on for us much longer than Trayvon, but Trayvon actually put it onto a national platform and helped mainstream America really understand where we're coming from as parents.
Now, I haven't been a black parent in a very long time. However, I can say this, that I think we're focusing on the wrong thing here. The hoodie situation, to me, is the wrong thing to be focusing on. I live in a predominantly white, middle-class neighborhood. If I assign somebody to neighborhood watch, and there is somebody walking through the neighborhood by themselves, you could, in a hoodie or without the hoodie, it's somebody that we don't know. There is a responsibility for neighborhood watch to make sure that we're all safe. I think the real conversation has to be when they called the police and the police said, look, back off, stop following this kid or this man. That's where the conversation should start. It's not necessarily the hoodie. If there's a stranger in my neighborhood and I'm on neighborhood watch, I want to know what's going on.
Okay, but he was profiled. I mean, we've learned that Trayvon was profiled. I mean, George Zimmerman had said he looked suspicious. He was wearing a hoodie. He's a black kid walking, you know, late at night.
What we need to remember, though, is that I live in a predominantly white suburb here in Georgia. And my son is not a stranger to our neighborhood. We owned our house there. And he still was profiled. It didn't stop him from being profiled. Yeah. So it's about knowing who your neighbors are, trusting that a black boy walking down the street is just a black boy walking down the street and could be your neighbor, your neighbor's friend. And we don't have that benefit.
To me, and you know what? This goes beyond this occasion, and that's why it resonated with so many black people across the country. It's the profiling that happens in everyday life, all over the place, whether you have a hoodie on or not.
Hey, look, white kids are profiled, okay?
Not like black kids get profiled. Not like black kids get profiled.
I have watched, and I'm guilty of this. I remember being trained by a manager when I was working in a store as a teenager that we lived in sort of a, I'll just lay it out there, kind of a redneck area is where I was working. And I was told if a kid rolled in there looking a certain way, and we weren't talking about black kids, we're talking about white kids, that I needed to keep my eye on them because they probably were going to shoplift.
Yeah, but you know what? They go home at the end of the day, they can walk in all different kinds of environments, put a suit on, look great, whatever, and nobody's looking at them every time they go in a store. I remember a situation when I was living in Florida. I'm with a cabbie. He doesn't want to drop me off where I want to go. So I say, you got to drop me off there. He says, no, 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 calls me every N-word in the book. As soon as I make an argument, pulls me next to a cop and says, this guy's trying to beat me up. That's the kind of profiling that black people go through every single day. And I think you can't make the analogy to white people because it's on our skin every day, wherever we go. And that's why this is a bigger discussion.
I 100% agree with you on that. There's no way for me to 100% empathize with what you go through on a day-to-day. I have a coworker of mine, Carl, who has detailed for me the conversations he has to have with his black daughters and son about this kind of thing. It's a conversation I would never think to have with my 10-year-old white son. But he's got a 10-year-old black son, and they have to have that conversation.
You know, I think there's a conversation about profiling, and then there's a conversation about racism. And I feel like I'm kind of sticking up for the white person here, you know. But I mean, I went to a predominantly black school, and my mom talked to me about, look, you're going to be different in this school, okay? And you have to think about what you're saying and how you're acting, and you're going to have to make a big effort here because you're different. And you know, kids wanted to kick my ass because I was white, okay? So believe me, I'm not saying, okay, it's all the same situation.
But then you understand, though.
But racism, we can all have that discussion,
right? So your mom had that conversation with you about one specific school that you went to. That's a conversation that we have to have with our kids about moving in America, period.
Yeah, great
You don't
point.
get to take that
Great
off.
point.
You don't get to walk into a store. You don't get to walk into a job. You don't get to walk into anywhere without people noticing this first. That's all there is to it. So how do you teach your child how to deal with that? For me, that conversation started when my babies were in the womb, reading them stories about themselves, talking to them, playing them specific music to get them into the mind frame of loving this, loving everything about it, having that self-esteem, so that when they walk into the room and they're the only one there, which happens all the time, that they know how to move within that with their shoulders squared, their chin up, understanding that they're no less than anyone else.
I love this discussion. I could do this all hour. And your blog is fantastic, by the way. Janine, thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.